All right, YouTube, literature update time. The Sefer Raziel, the fake hermetic Sefer Raziel, the Liber Salomonis, is now available. Link in the description where you can obtain that from Amazon. Again, using Amazon for everything. Nobody can blame me if something goes wrong. They're required to distribute it. Everything is handled through them. It's a lot easier for me. I've been working on the Sword of Moses, and so the Sefer Raziel has actually been done for a few days, and I didn't get around to announcing it. I had other things I needed to do, a lot of political videos, a lot of work editing the Sword of Moses, and I'm working on other things as well. There's a full load on my plate through the middle of April, and then it'll slow down a little bit for a while and then right back to work. I want to release an edition of the Lesser Keys, but let's talk about the text at hand, the Liber Salomonis, one of the most interesting grimoires that I've edited my way through. It required a lot of editing because of its extreme Old English. It's one of the Sloan texts, as many are, these English texts that were translated centuries ago into what you would consider pre-modern English at best. A lot of what we would consider spelling errors, a lot of extra U's and E's for no reason, and double O's where they shouldn't be. I choose to release my texts that I'm putting out in modern English, except where there is an incantation or a prayer of some sort that has the these and thous, and it just looks out of place if you remove them. With that exception, everything else is fully modernized. Put in a forward, cover art, sometimes illustrations, depends on the length and the content. For this one, it's not illustrated. It didn't need to be. There's nothing really to illustrate. And what the text does is it gives first 9 precepts to live by, which are fairly standard, like, be chaste, give to the poor and so forth. Sort of the biblical stuff that you usually get in some of the more light-hearted grimoires, although this one has a bit of the diabolical in it. Then you have 7 sections to the work, technically 8 because there is one short section at the end that seems slightly out of place. It's like the person writing it just tacked it on at the end because they ran out of room in the other. They had already written the other sections, and they're like, oh crap, well, I've still got this other stuff. I'll just throw it in at the end. Basically, categorizations, of 24 sacred stones, sacred herbs, sacred beings. It says beasts, but it also talks about the beings of fire, the demons and airy spirits and stuff. I wouldn't classify them as animals in the generally understood sense, although it gives them their own element. It breaks them down into the 4 elements, the 24 hours of the day, the 7 days of the week, the 12 months of the year. It's overruled completely by the celestial. That is the overarching concept to which every other part of this work is subjugated. The philosophical angles, the categorizations that are in there. And so you have a little bit of the alchemical almost. For instance, it speaks about topaz. Well, if you have water and throw chunks of topaz into it, it won't boil and stuff like that. Chemical processes, real or imagined, that have to do with what we recognize as something secular, but then were considered mystic qualities, gold and silver and mercury and so forth. The various beasts, and it talks a great deal about what you would consider folk magic regarding certain parts of these various beasts. For instance, the top feathers from the left wing of the vulture do this. The top feathers from the right wing of the vulture do that. The heart of a deer does this. The tongue of a cow does that, and so forth. It speaks about the use of blood and animal parts and various herbs. And it also speaks about fumigation, and this is one of the lengthiest parts of this work. Specifically 7 for the days of the week. 7 types of incense with different characteristics, different uses. They have to be used on the right day at the right time. And you're supposed to create and use this incense profusely to obtain certain capabilities, certain powers, favor of God, dispelling demons, healing the sick, and so forth. It has several passages in it towards the end, it's not part of the actual categories given in prior sections, in the alas, the wings. Rather, it's a list, a fairly lengthy list of actual folk magic. There are several passages that are basically the same as those in the Little Albert. So I'm going to assume some cross-influence there, which belies the date. It claims to be written far earlier than it actually is. It's not the actual Kabbalistic text of the Sefer Raziel. It's a completely different work that simply borrows that same title. It claims to be from King Solomon, and inspired by Solomon, who in turn in this text is claimed is getting this information in the same manner that Adam himself did. This is a common feature in works of the Renaissance period. They're ascribing themselves especially to Solomon, but also to Moses, like the Sword of Moses and so forth, and to Adam, or to other great people at the Hermes, great people, great thinkers that were then in the past. And they ascribe these mystic writings to them, specifically because they realized, if I write this book of what was then considered medicine or science, what we would consider, herb lore and alchemy and so forth. If I write this and I put my own name on it, nobody really, who am I? Nobody cares. But if I say that Solomon passed it down through mystic generations and I somehow obtain the text, I don't have it. I can't actually show you the original work, but trust me, it came from Solomon. Then people will take it more seriously. This is how this material got spread around. It's from Solomon, it's from Hermes, it's from, it's from Aristotle, it's from Paracelsus or something like that. And that's how they spread the material. That's why we know specifically that it was not actually made in antiquity, because it wouldn't be claiming such things if it were. Its allusion to Kabbalah is rather sketchy as well, specifically because the celestial stuff in it that it talks about, the categories given, are not from Judaism. They're not from Judaistic tradition. They're from European tradition from much later, from, again, the Renaissance itself. But it's still an extremely good work. It's about 80 pages. So it's on the longer, actually, side for most of these grimoires. You got to realize a lot of them are 40 or 50 pages. Some of them are 60. The Rosary of the Philosophers so far, I believe, is the longest. And this is actually on the longer side, closer to the Black Pullet than to the Red Dragon or something like that. But it's a good work. It contains a great deal of very dense folk magic, like the Little Albert. The Sword of Moses, though, that I'm editing now, takes the cake as far as hyper short little folk incantations and mentions of herbs and stuff. Far more vast. I think it's 140 different entries or somewhere around there. It's over 100 different entries. And then there are more in the appendix, which was slapped on at the end. So that's even more dense. It's literally 1 or 2 sentences per piece of folk magic information within the Sword of Moses. It shares that in common with that final section of the Liber Salomonis. But it's a good work. There's no competition, as far as I can see, for an inexpensive release of the same. All the others are primarily in hardcover. I'm seeing some softcover editions that are $30 or $40 a piece. I released it for $7.77 because I figured that was appropriate for the subject material. I would have done $6.66, but I think some of the Christian mystics would have looked askance at that slightly, so I decided finally against it and upped the price very slightly from there. But it's worth it. It is a good work. It's one of the more well-written grimoires that I've seen. Really, some of them, like the Sword of Moses, it's not that it's poorly made, but it's going to be a bitch to actually edit all the way through it. I've already broken it down into its sections and partially de-antiquated the language, and there's still quite a bit of work to do, and this is half the length of the Liber Salomonis, so it's going to take a while. This should keep me busy until the end of February at least, for a work that's not even 40 pages long. That's how dense the material at times can get because of the language used. In some cases, it's fragmentary or partially fragmentary material, or the only translation that's out of copyright, something from the actual Renaissance by Sloane or whatever. Doesn't have any images, or it's missing sections, or there's something lost in translation there. The original document worked with was not complete or something, and sometimes we don't have what you would consider proper documentation of the original, and so we have to go on something it's secondhand. It's good. It's not that it's badly made, but it's not quite all there. So it's going to take a while to work my way through the Sword of Moses. In comparison, the Sefer Raziel is fairly easy, even with its extreme antiquated language. So it is now available. Again, link in the description. I would highly recommend it for anyone practicing the occult. Also, you're going to save a shit ton of money getting this edition as opposed to some of these others. I mean, it's not like they're extra special editions bound in leather and gold embossed or anything like that. They're just paperback editions, but they run, again, $30 or $40. That's one of the problems with the occult world. A lot of the people that have done editing like I'm doing in the past have thought primarily about their own wallets. They don't appear to understand that if they can get their name out there with many more people by lowering the price, it's actually going to pay off in the long run. That's my philosophy. Saves people money, saves me a lot of, grief with people who would say, well, why the fuck are you charging $20, $30 for something that's really, shorter than the average novella? It works for me. I don't even give a fuck, but it's a good work. That would definitely be one that I would recommend. I've had people ask me, which specific works do you recommend? Rosary of the Philosophers if you're into alchemy. Definitely the Rosary of the Philosophers. This and probably the Little Albert if you're into the darker or the folky side. The Arbitel, and this work as well if you're into the Celestial. The Arbitel and then the Liber Salomonis. Those would be the ones above the others that I would recommend. Of course, I'm biased. I'm releasing editions of these. I'm going to say they're all worth buying. But if you're only getting a small number, if you're interested in one specific category of the occult, definitely Rosary of the Philosophers, Liber Salomonis, the Arbitel of Magic. These are some of the and the Little Albert. These are some of the better works within these various subgenres of the occult. So that's about all. Again, link in the description. Peace out.